Edward Jonas, thank you for coming to the Southern Atelier. Thank you. And we really appreciate you coming, making time in your schedule to come down and teach here.
Well, I'm really excited about being here because the layout of the place and being surrounded with this much beautiful artwork and seeing the excitement of the students makes me I love the environment. I just love the excitement of learning and the enthusiasm of my students certainly has been affected by the environment too. And as a teaching asset, Sarasota and the whole southern region of the state, in fact the whole South, has been enriched by having this particular opportunity for somebody to find really good solid art training, which is not as readily available as people think. That's one of the nice things about coming to the conference is you are dealing with some of the most accomplished, and each one of them are so different.
That's what I like about the conference. Yeah, it's like you have different styles.
Totally, and like you have anywhere from the very tight classical, very rigid structured, to the very loose and yet it's still, when we say portrait society, they think of a very narrow range thing, and the last thing I wanted to think of was Olin Mills aesthetic. It's not that at all, because when Jamie Weiss, we gave him the gold medal at PAFA one year, he stood up and he said, I was thinking about this, but when you say portrait, I think of everything I do as a portrait, because I am portraying whatever it is I'm looking at, whether it's a still life or an atmospheric condition or anything, and that's what we've embraced, but it's really kind of hard to get that out there sometimes, because people have very rigid expectations. But it is.
That's what I love about it, though.
I do too,
Because I'm that way myself. Like, I enjoy loose work as much as I enjoy tight work, you know what I mean? And I enjoy different kinds of things. But my personal feeling is that you can there's the universal principles of what makes something good are in every style.
It is, it is. And it's true. And your ability is so well centered within that wide range that you could teach to any extreme very easily, because you have such good drawing skills, and you have good proportional sense, and you have sensitivity and transitions of your grays. It's just beautiful work. I love the charcoal work. That's really where you're looking at the skin, below the skin into the bones of somebody's strengths with things. And like when people talk about, they love John Singer Sargent paintings. Well, if you really want to understand Sargent, you need to look at his watercolors.
Yeah. Exactly
because that's all just drawing and just put on color.
Yeah.
And so that is, and I see that in your charcoal stuff.
Well, thank you.
And Bettina Steinke, but she was like an illustrator of the ilk of Bill Draper and other some people of the past, and she was a huge influence on Richard Schmid and other people.
She was great work.
She really was.
Love her work.
Wonderful artist, but her charcoals, of all the beautiful color oils and pastels that she could do, it's funny, I asked her one time, we were sitting in her studio, I said, really, Bettina, when you look back over your career, because she just told me a story about not being able to go to her retrospects and be comfortable, because every painting she went by she wanted to correct. Because artists were always looking at, ooh, that could have been better.
Wow, that's so funny.
Yeah, it is. But I said, what were you happiest with? What are you most proud of? I said, my charcoals. And she said, and nobody wants to buy them.
That's so interesting.
It is interesting.
It's so interesting.
Because
I feel the same way.
Do you?
Yes, I feel the same way, yeah. Because I love the drawing,
Yes.
and everything, but it's a painterly way of drawing. It's like painting.
It is.
It's just monochromatic.
Yeah.
But that's what I want to go for in terms of my work, is making those drawings a little more lively and painterly. But the structure has to be there.
It is the structure.
And you can immediately tell when someone doesn't have that structure.
In the class I'm teaching, which of course is all about form and structure, and we're trying to build a better sense towards that. And I was talking about how people tend to think of maybe this side of the face as only one plane, when really it goes in and out and flips like that. And I said it may be all one value, because I like to talk about drawing even when I'm sculpting. And I said the only way you can deal with that, if you're dealing with color, is change the temperature slightly, because you're not changing the value. As it's a little more difficult in black and white.
Yes. And you did an awesome job with that in there. That fits, what you're teaching fits so well with what we teach at the Atelier.
Yeah.
In terms of this whole other idea of morphology and anatomy and structure.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And it adds to that observation, you know, that knowledge adds to the observation. We're just so interested in your work. And, you know, as a sculptor and as a painter, you have do quite a variety of work. I wanted to ask you, what is your motivation when you create art?
I'm excited about several. I mean, I get turned on about a lot of things, especially things that have a historical element to it, because I think artists love learning in terms of history and getting challenged to visualize something that may be beyond the comprehension of most people. But it goes back to maybe when I first started drawing and working, which I was in my early teens at the time. And I kind of got focused on portraiture, doing portrait heads of people when I was about 14, 15, wow. Because I find people very engaging.
Yeah.
And it's a bit of a challenge. But it's that excitement that you get when you start working on something, and all of a sudden you get to a point that it's there, it's turned a corner. You know you have gotten what is most interesting to you in a scene or a face or a shape, and you've gotten that down first. And then you know the rest of it's just fun, because it's like you got the applause, now you're building the applause as you work on. And there's some kind of charge that I get from that. That's just, I can't express that. It's not like anything else. And it's a feeling of accomplishment afterwards. Not that you feel like you have ever totally finished something, or you couldn't do better again. You know, that's that constant drive to get a little further down the road. But it's that spark of excitement that gets so infectious that you just can't do without it.
Oh, I love it. That's so well put. Yeah. So what do you want to express through your art? Is it that excitement? Is it what do you want to communicate?
You know, I've heard it put that the artist's job is to find to lay out in front of other people's eyes what their eyes have detected, or to find what you find extraordinary in what they would find just as an ordinary scene. A lot of people don't see the levels of subtle color, variations in value, the space between objects sometimes, which is the essence of architecture, that I think artists who focus upon those things are sensitive to. And by sharing your vision, you're enriching people's lives. And I can't think of anything better than to try and do that, and maybe turn them on visually about things. Plus, it transcends education, age, cultural background. You know, you can bring in a 10-year-old boy from Thailand who doesn't speak a bit of English and put him in front of a painting, and there's complete understanding of it. And I just find that so enriching.
Yeah, I love that thought.
Yeah.
No matter, all walks of life can enjoy your work.
Right. And so I guess that I'm pretty dedicated to representationalism.
Yeah.
Not that I'm anti-abstraction, because that's a very, very important element as compositional design, as you well know, because I can tell by the work around here that you embrace that. But pure abstraction, unless it's very skillfully done, rarely reaches that level of communication with people. You know, it sometimes misses the mark.
Right. Oh, that's so interesting. So who would you say are your influences? Who would you say are your influences in your art?
Oh boy. You know, I was, as a kid, the first 10 years of my life I spent in Ohio, and my parents eventually moved to Florida to get away from the cold weather because my dad was a mailman and he wanted to get out of the snow. But I spent it on a sheep farm out in the country. And the only thing that I could see coming in was Saturday Evening Post magazine. So of course, Norman Rockwell.
Yeah.
But it spoke to a kid who I wasn't even in school at the time. But I was fascinated when I was told that somebody drew that.
Right.
And then it goes from there.
Right.
It's whatever you're exposed to that catches your eye. But illustrators have always been exciting vehicles to learn from. And we were talking earlier about Dean Cornwell.
Yeah.
I just think he's one of the best. And of course, N.C. Wyeth, Harvey Dunn, so many of those old illustrators that are still exciting. And, and then when I was going to college in the 60s and 70s, the only person who could survive the onslaught of abstraction and anti-objective artwork was Andrew Wyeth, whose stark watercolors of the Pennsylvania countryside were so powerful to me. And then eventually I got to meet him and to know him. And he's very,
what was he like?
He was a very humble, quiet man. And,
really?
Yeah. He didn't strike me as somebody who in your mind you build up this idea of somebody who was so great. But he didn't have that sense of himself. He still remained that. He stayed in the same town he grew up in, Chadds Ford. And Betsy, his wife, was like so many situations, the power behind the business end of it. And she really was a driving force, a real dynamo. And she's quite an impressive lady. It's a wonderfully interesting family, when you go back and you look at NC's connections. Carolyn, his sister, was a painter, but Andy could easily have walked into the post office and walked past you, and you would know he's one of the greatest artists in the Western Hemisphere.
So famous, too.
Yeah, and very, very nice.
Renowned. That is a great experience.
Yeah.
I would love to pick your brain about all the different artists that you've come in contact with over your career and influenced you.
A lot of them I've just met, and I've not had time to pick their brains as much as I would like to. But there's a real comfort in being with people that share your passion and who you admire.
That's so true.
Yeah, and have accomplished something.
Right.
Because I think also it encourages you so much because you can tell these aren't giants. They're just accomplished and focused upon becoming the best that they can be, and they were successful at it, in your eyes anyway.
Right. They're just people.
They are, and so that means I have hope.
Yeah.
So.
That's amazing. What a great thought that is, and it's true. Was there anybody else that strikes you as somebody that you've perhaps met or had an experience with that has?
Yes, there was one. When you look back over your education, there's been a lot of people who've taken time to help me. A lot of artists who have invited me into the studio and shared with me, from Richard Schmid to Sonny Sunbloom's, one of his, from his, Ed Gordon was an assistant to Sonny Gordon Sunbloom, Sonny Sunbloom in Chicago, who did the famous Coca-Cola Santa Clauses.
Those guys. Yeah.
And I met Ed, and he was just the most delightful person.
Really?
He had done the illustration for the early books on reading, and Tom and Dick and Mary and the dog and all those that he used to have around the studio. Those are just people that give you a little boost. But in college, I came under the influence of a German sculptor who had studied at the Bauhaus and had left Germany in '33 because of the Nazis' pressure for the school to change its way of thinking, because it was rather modernist, and they wanted it to be used in support of the Nazis' ideals. It wasn't going to work out, so of course they closed it down. And so his name was Frederick Holschuh, and he'd come to FSU because FSU had garnered a lot of some of the really great intellectuals in to build their physics programs and music and math programs. And Professor Holschuh came to FSU to start the sculpture program there. He really was he was a very gruff, typical German, like this kind of guy, who believed in movement as being the backbone to good drawing, not exactitude, but a sense of what the thing is. And so you went through a gesture, contour drawing. And I thought I could draw when I got there. But I almost quit art school over it. It was so difficult. But he just kept, no, that doesn't work. No, that doesn't work. Until I finally got the fluidity of a line, and I understood how I could expand a little bit on a little bit of movement, and all of a sudden the sense of it was there, rather than an exact photographic copy of it was there. And that has impressed me the rest of my life, so that I see sculpture and drawing or anything else as it's an interpretive media. You need to interpret and be selective as an artist, which your greatest job is to edit out stuff that are not important, find the truth in it, and then kind of expand it a little bit. And I think that idea has driven me my whole life. Plus, he took me outside of the classroom one day and he said, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And I said, I don't know. At the time I was on a gymnastics team. I was thinking about maybe going into coaching gymnastics because I didn't see a lot of opportunities in art growing up. And I said, maybe book illustrations. I'm like, no, you could be an artist. And bam, that was it. The switch, awesome. The switch just from that 3-minute conversation got permanently turned on.
That's amazing.
I've been eternally grateful for that.
Yes.
That little comment that he made. So you never know as a teacher, what kind of influence you're going to have on somebody, especially maybe even somebody in your class that's not the best. And I've seen that time and time again.
But I was going to ask you, do you have any advice for young artists who are starting out? Yes.
That when you go to select some place to study, don't assume just because the school, the university, or whatever, where you're going, has a big name, that they're going to have a good sense of what it's going to take to teach you to be a great artist or a successful artist in the terms that you're going to be able to make a living from what it is you create. Not necessarily that teaching's not a good profession. It's so needed, but skill within the teaching profession to be able to teach visually by demonstration, by doing, so your students can see you pick up a piece of charcoal, which is so key to the atelier movement, and actually do it. They'll learn so much more that way. You need to find a place where the instructors are doing or painting or sculpting in the manner that you would hope to someday. Then you have a chance of learning. But if you go to a faculty show and you don't see it, then there's no hope of you learning it either. I would suggest that and we need good teachers, so we do need people to pursue masters in art, MFAs, as much as they can so they can go on to teach, but they need to find at some point that atelier studying under master experience, whether it's with you here, or whether it's with Daniel Graves in Florence, or whether it was Studio in Caminati. So many of these ateliers are beginning to provide opportunities. A balanced education like that will make you prepared for whatever art world the future is going to hold.
Well, thank you so much for sharing those thoughts with us. I guess we got to get back into the workshop.
Yeah.
To finish up the day. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, John.